We're crossing over with Ryan Harings from Locked On Badgers. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right, really thrilled for today's episode. We got Ryan Harings. He is the host of Locked On Badgers, and we go back and forth. He starts talking about Wisconsin. I hop in there talking about JMU, and then we give our keys to the game. So let's get right into it. It is a crossover edition, Locked On Sunbelt and Locked On Badgers. All right, welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We're crossing over with Ryan Harings of Locked On Badgers. We got JMU of the Sunbelt, 12 seed, taking on the Wisconsin Badgers, the 5 seed. Ryan, thanks for hopping on. For those of us who have not seen a second of Wisconsin Badgers basketball this year, please fill us in on how good this 5-seeded Badgers team is that took down Purdue in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Glad that we can do this. I think both fan bases are going to get smarter because of this. Certainly, the Badger fans need to learn a little bit more about JMU as well. Yeah, so the Badgers this year, really interesting team. Started off like a Spitfire, beat Marquette, beat Michigan State. I know JMU did that as well. Got up to number 6 in the country at one point where they were just on top of the Big Ten. People were talking potential 1-2 seed, offensive efficiency off the charts, and then they hit a major skid, right? Badger fans went from Gray Guard Coach of the Year, ? To fire Gray Guard immediately in February. Lost 8 of 11, I believe. Bad losses to Rutgers, lost to Michigan, a Michigan team that won 8 games this year, so they went through a massive slide in February. And then they kind of rebounded. You alluded to it. They beat Purdue in the Big Ten tournament. They also hung with Illinois, a really good Illinois team, almost won the Big Ten tournament. They're back healthy, which was a big part of their February swoon. A lot of their depth was gone. A couple of key reserves were out. So it's been a Badger team that's been marked with some inconsistency. It is not your typical Badger team. For people who watch a lot of college basketball, you kind of remember those Badger teams that grinded out defensively, move the ball, take 30 seconds off every shot clock. This is a much more offensive Badger team. They score in the 70s and 80s pretty consistently. A lot of shooting, more athletic, much more athletic than typical Badger team. They went out and got a big-time transfer in AJ Storr, who came over from St. John's. He's a 6'6" NBA athlete. Doesn't have all the skill set yet there, but definitely someone who will go above the rim and put some people on a poster. He's done it a couple times this year. But defensively, this team has been pretty bad, which has always been a hallmark of Wisconsin, and it's odd. They give up perimeter defense has been a major issue for the Badgers this year. They give up a ton of shots. They haven't defended the perimeter well. They've struggled with the pick and roll. They've struggled interior defense at times. So it's really been an odd Wisconsin team from what people are used to seeing in the last 20 years of Badger basketball.
Well, a few things what you said there are going to perk up some ears for JMU fans, because getting shots up is a good thing. And struggling interior defense could be a problem with a couple of big guys for JMU. Let's get back to that 4-game losing streak and what you said, 8 out of 11. So was it a lack of depth? Was it bench guys? How do you, again, what we saw and went through the stats yesterday and the scores, they don't blow a lot of people out, and they don't get blown out, though they did get blown out by Rutgers in one game towards the end of the season. What happened in that 4-game losing streak that I noticed that they did lose to Michigan?
Yeah, that was kind of the question we were all trying to figure out. Like, this team that was ranked 6th, how did the wheels fall off so quickly? So some of it was depth. There's 2 guys off the bench that play pretty big roles for the Badgers, a guard, Kamari McGee, and a kind of a combo guard, John Blackwell. They were both out with injuries. So I think the depth was a big part of it. The starters had to play more minutes, and I think they just – listen, I mean, in baseball, if you're a baseball guy, you know the term the dog days of summer. I think there was a little bit of the dog days of college basketball winter that hit the Badgers, where they kind of ran out of gas for a little bit. I think the lack of depth hurts. And Greg Gard talked about this. He said, you're going to go through adversity at some point in the season. That was kind of our stretch of it. And there was a point where we weren't sure if we were going to come out of it, but the Badgers really in the last I would say 5-6 games. There was a loss to Purdue in that stretch where they played them really tough. The win against Purdue, wins against Maryland, Rutgers at home. They beat 2 teams in the Big Ten tournament. They've really kind of snapped out of that. And I think Badger fans now, we are seeing shades of that team that was ranked number 6 in the country earlier in the year. So I think we're pretty confident. I speak as for Badger fans in general heading into March from where we were in that February swoon.
We're talking to Ryan Harings from Locked On Badgers. You can follow him at Ryan and Bucky on X/Twitter. All right, so what was the reaction? I swear I heard an audible groan when they announced the Badgers, and they were all excited, and then I thought I heard an audible groan when they announced JMU. What's been the reaction to playing the Dukes? They know how many wins they have now and how good a team they are now, but what was the initial reaction of Wisconsin and Wisconsin fans taking on the Dukes?
Yeah, let me read. This is a DM I got from Twitter from someone who watches the show. He said, this is from a guy named Ken Payne, who's a Badger fan. Quote, I watched a couple of James Madison games. Now I wish I wouldn't have. Like, so, yeah, like there is a bit of a concern about the draw, right? I mean, James Madison, obviously, 13-game winning streak right now. I believe they had a 14-game earlier in the year, won 31 games, can shoot the ball, scoring, has some veteran players. I would say this. I didn't have that same reaction, and that's no slight or knock against James Madison whatsoever. But if you're going to be a 5 seed, you're going to probably play a team that's tricky in the 12 slot. That's just kind of how it typically works. So I didn't go into it thinking that first round is going to be a layup for the Badgers, right? So to me, it's fine. I think the Badgers present some issues for James Madison as well. I think both sides, probably go into this feeling pretty good. I'm sure James Madison feels pretty good about it, especially with some of the defensive issues the Badgers have had. Watching some James Madison highlights, there's certainly shots going up, and that's been an issue for the Badgers to stop this year. So I'm sure they feel good about it, but I personally wasn't quite as freaked. And again, that's no slight to JMU whatsoever. It's just you're going to play a tricky team in the 5-12. That's how it always works. So but there are Badger fans that would have preferred a different 12 than James Madison, though.
All right, so where would Wisconsin have the advantage? Do they have bigger guards? Are they taller in size? I don't know if they're going to be bigger in girth inside because they got JMU's got a couple of big guys inside. Where would Wisconsin have the advantage?
Yeah, so I think the Badgers, just looking at James Madison's roster, looking at your leading rebounder, TJ Bickerstaff, and I want to get into some of those questions as well. The Badgers just have more size. I mean, like Bickerstaff is 6'9", I believe. I mean, Stephen Crowell, the Badger starting center, is a legit 7-foot, big body guy. And he is a player the Badger fans have kind of struggled with at times because he struggles against bigger physical guys, but against smaller matchups, against players that are 6'9", 6'10", Stephen Crowell is kind of a problem, and he's able to take advantage of smaller post players. He's a really good passer. So what the Badgers like to do is get him in the post, put shooters around him, and then make defenses make a tough decision, right? That's offensive basketball. You make defenses make tough decisions. So I kind of probably kick that back to you a little bit. What's the concern level maybe guarding a bigger 7-foot guy who likes to operate in the post?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not sure. He may be shorter, but I'm not exactly sure how much smaller these guys are. With Bickerstaff and Jalen Carey, these guys are wide bodies, and they're pretty physical. They're not finesse guys inside. It may not have been the best matchup to show that. Arkansas State in the Sun Belt Championship game just did not have someone to match up with the two guys from JMU inside. If App State had gotten there, then it would have been size on size. Justin Abson is really good. I think the defensive player of the year in the Sun Belt. And so James Madison's got some size inside. They may not be quite as tall, but I mean they're just as thick. TJ is 6'9", 220. Jalen Carey is bigger at 6'8", 245. So they may be shorter, but there is a little bit of girth in there for JMU. So it'll be interesting to see if Wisconsin, if that is their one thing how they can utilize that size inside, and JMU at the same time, if one guy can't do it and these guys don't play at the same time, then they do have 10 fouls to give to go
Yeah.
inside at Wisconsin. That would be the one other way to look at it from a JMU point of view. At least that's the way I would look at it.
Well, so the Badgers will definitely test that. And it'd be interesting to see the result of that matchup. They will definitely, they have two guys that will post a ton. Tyler Wall is a unique player, been there 5 years. He's going to just post up almost exclusively. He doesn't have a jumper, but he is a handful in the post. He's a kind of a 6'9" power forward. Crowley, 7-foot center. So both are really good passers. Both at times this season have commanded double teams in the post, which just opens up shooting around the perimeter for the Badgers. That's going to be a big matchup. If JMU can hold up in the post without having to double, without giving a lot of fouls, that's going to be a big part of their ability to win this game. I think if they have issues in the post for whatever reason, it's going to bode pretty well for the Badgers. They're going to get perimeter shots or free throws out of that.
So when they do double team, do they kick it outside or do they look for somebody inside if they get double teamed inside?
Yeah, they're really trying to kick. There are a couple guys who excel at cutting to the rim on this team, but they have a lot of shooters right now, which again hasn't been the typical Badger team. The typical Badger team has had a couple shooters. This team, Chucky Hepburn, the starting point guard, can hit shots. Klesmith, the starting two guard, can hit shots. AJ Storr, the transfer I talked about a little earlier, can hit shots from the perimeter. Blackwell off the bench can hit shots. So they'll kick it. They'll find open perimeter shooters. This is a tough team to guard. Now, this team is also, as I mentioned, defensively has had a lot of issues this year. So this team wins by outscoring people, which I think that's a type of game James Madison, and with your ability to shoot, you're not going to feel, I don't think James Madison would feel out of place in that type of game.
Talking to Ryan Harings, Locked On Badgers. We're Locked On Sunbelt doing a crossover previewing JMU and Wisconsin. All right, so to wrap up with Wisconsin, I think this may be one of the, I know we got the COVID year and everything like that, and a lot of guys coming back, but this may be one of those games that both teams have experienced. Usually that was another trait of Wisconsin, right? That they don't get the NBA players. They get the guys that stay 3 or 4 years and then leave. But, JMU and Wisconsin seem to both have veteran-laden teams.
Yeah, that's a great point. And experience wins in March, right? It's such a big factor. This Badger team is really, really experienced. Hepburn's been the starting point guard for 3 years. Stephen Crowell's been there 4 years. Tyler Wall, like I said, has been there 5 years. Klesmith, this is his 4th year. He was a transfer from Wofford. 5th year? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I mean, they're all experienced. The only guy really who's not going to have that is the 6th man on this team, John Blackwell, who's been a revelation. He's been a great pickup. He's a true freshman. But outside of that, just about everybody on this team has years of experience. So, yeah, it's a great point. It feels like that typically, especially experienced guards, are kind of the key usually to those deep March runs. And the Badgers definitely have that coming into this contest.
All right, when we come back, we'll flip it. We'll preview the JMU Dukes going up against the Wisconsin Badgers on Locked On Sunbelt. We'll do that right after I tell you about Nissan. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Yukon Huskies can only be described as an armada. This top-seeded team is as hardcore as it gets out there, so no wonder they've landed the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament. They're one of the favorites to win it all, despite 4 of the 6 Power 6 conference champions standing in their way in the East region. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. And Amazon Fire. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experience with smart TVs, as well as the Fire Stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt. Let's get back to our crossover with the host of Locked On Badgers, Ryan Harings. I will tell him about the Sunbelt champion, JMU Dukes. All right, so let's flip it. Let me tell you a little bit about JMU. They lost a total of 3 games this year, and they only lost to 2 teams. They lost at Southern Miss, and they lost twice to App State. Both games to App State, who won the regular season in the Sun Belt, were close ball games. JMU, as you mentioned, beat Michigan State. That opened up the season. The only way they got that ball game is, I think, the manager of JMU, his uncle is Tom Izzo. So that was a family favor that didn't go in Tom Izzo's way because JMU was having difficulty scheduling. Then they had the other game of the year against Kent State, where they were down like 5 points with 3.5 seconds left to go. And if you want to see a ball game that they had no business winning, that was it. They hit a 3, and then they got an offensive foul, and then I think they got a layup and a foul on that, and they won a ball game. At the time, Kent State had the longest home winning streak in the nation, 22. Now, Kent State wasn't as good as they were supposed to be, and then had that unfortunate loss in the MAC tournament this past week. But JMU they got everyone's best shot. I saw them come in here. They were actually ranked when they played the Cajuns. The Cajuns put up a good battle, but they came away with a victory. They almost lost in the semifinals of the Sun Belt against Texas State. They put up a good battle, and then they caught a little bit of a break when App State wasn't there. They went up against Arkansas State, and they shot 60% in the first half, and then they shot 70% in the second half. And so for Wisconsin fans, they are a 3-headed team. 3-headed monster with Terrence Edwards Jr., the Sun Belt Player of the Year, 17.5 points a game or so. He's the top dog. And then you got TJ Bickerstaff inside and Noah Friedel outside. So those guys, every time I was recapping a game, those are the 3 guys. Well, what happens, February and March are the time for other guys to step up. Xavier Brown, the backup point guard, had 21 points in the first half in the Sun Belt Championship game. And then they also couldn't stop, Arkansas State could not stop the other freshman, which is the big guy, Jalen Carey. He had about 13 points. And then the big three took over in the second half and ran away from Arkansas State. I tell you, they ran out of gas, but they were just overmatched in that ball game. So obviously when you play your best, and it's tough I don't care who's on the other side. If you're shooting 60% in the first half and 70% in the second half, you're going to be tough to beat. So that would be if JMU has more than 2 guys rock and rolling offensively, because they are pretty good defensively, it'll be an interesting ball game. Do you think there's anything to this game's not going to start until 10 p.m. on Friday night, right? It's scheduled for 9:40, 8:40 Central Time, but that's not going to start on time. There's no way this will start. In fact, it very well could start around 10:30.
Yeah, agreed. No, I agree. Go ahead. You had a question?
No, that was it. I think it's going to be a late start. I don't know if that has an advantage to anything. Sun Belt games are usually around 7:00, so I don't know if it's an advantage to either one.
I don't think so. Probably. The Badgers have played some East Coast games too that start a little later. I think that's probably a wash on that one. Talk to me a little bit about about Edwards. 6'6" guard. I think he's been a starter for 3 or 4 years as he's a veteran player. What kind of defenders have given him issues this year?
I don't know if anybody defenders. Yeah, I'm not sure if any defenders have given him issues this year, because he can do it all. He can shoot the 3, he can drive to the hoop, and he can post up, and he can do the turnaround jumper while posting up. I would try to, probably go both ways. See if I got a bigger guy who can stick with him, who maybe is just as quick, or see if a smaller guy can guard him. He's tough. And where went to Pensacola in the Sun Belt Championship, he mentioned first how he's matured on and off the court. And, I don't think he scored. I'm not sure he scored. Well, maybe he had like 5 points. When Xavier Brown was going off, he just got out of the way. And that was something that he needed to be taught. I think his attitude was, I'm going to go get mine. And if we win, great. If we don't, I still got mine. That's not his attitude this year. If the other guys are hot, I'm going to feed them because I know they're not going to leave me open. So those guys will be open. And a lot of times, Terrence Edwards or Bickerstaff or Friedel is going to draw double coverage. And all of a sudden, Xavier Brown or Michael Green III are going to the hoop. Terrence Edwards is your prototypical swing guy that is tough to defend. I would probably try to defend him with a bigger guy. He may not be the most fleet of foot going to the hoop, but he can still drive to the bucket. He's probably not as quick, but he's a full basketball player. Can shoot it, can go to the hoop, and can post up.
Yeah, his film. I was just watching some highlights of him today, actually getting ready for this show and the matchup. And his film's really impressive. Changes speed really well. Good size, good shooting, gets to the rim. That's gonna be another really interesting matchup. I can almost promise you the Badgers are going to try Max Klesman on him a lot. Klesman is an upperclassman shooting guard, really tough, hard-nosed kid. Will get after it defensively, but shorter. He's more 6'3"-ish, so there's going to be a bit of a size advantage there. I think that's where the Badgers will start. If that doesn't work, they don't really have a great alternative. The bigger guys on the roster, AJ Storr has had some defensive issues this year. Tyler Wall's more of a power forward. It's going to be a lot of Klesman on him, and that's going to be a fascinating matchup to watch. Klesman has done well at times this year, but like I said, there is going to be a height disadvantage there, so that's going to be a fascinating one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Does he elect to shoot over him or try to go past him and try to get the Badgers in foul trouble?
What is James Madison trying to do offensively? Are they hunting early shots? Are they running motion? Like what are they trying to do offensively?
They try to get the open shot. It's not Arkansas State kind of runs that Alabama. We had two Alabama assistant coaches in the Sun Belt this year, Georgia Southern and Arkansas State, and they try to get up a shot as quickly as possible. JMU is running motion. They're trying to get the best shot. Now, is that, one of the point guards driving and dishing? Is that Terrence Edwards creating and kicking to Noah Friedel? And Noah Friedel can drive to the hoop. He is not just the guy sitting out there at the 3-point line, waiting to shoot it. But if he gets hot, you can be in his face, and that's going to be a problem. So, no, they are looking to get the best shot. Not necessarily the quickest shot, but the best shot is what their offense is. And I think that's what he said, Mark Byington said. In the first half, we were kind of, Xavier Brown was doing his thing and Jalen Carey. And then all of a sudden in the second half, we started doing the team thing. He was just contrasting. He wasn't, insulting it or anything like that. But he said that, we were doing more of a team thing. So we were getting easier shots and we were making them.
Let me throw a couple quick questions. So some people knew you were coming on the show. I reached out to the Discord. The first one is JMU's depth. Are any concerns there if someone gets in foul trouble or potentially getting worn down by maybe a more bigger physical Big Ten team, if that even is a concern?
Well, if one of the big three gets into foul trouble, then I guess Jalen Carey can come in for Bickerstaff, but they don't have anybody. There's not the Terrence Edwards is coming off the bench. There's not another guy coming off the bench. If one of their big three is in foul trouble, that's an issue. And if you get the two big guys in foul trouble, that'll be an issue as well. They do have, again, the Xavier Browns and Jalen Carey. They're pretty good, 7-8 deep. And I guess Woodley as well can play. He's a little bit bigger, but those are complementary players for the most part, right? They're not the big guns. They do have some good depth, but if someone gets into foul trouble, that's going to be an issue. And I think Terrence Edwards can once in a while can get himself into foul trouble. Now it usually works itself out for the second half, but I've seen him sit at times early in first halves.
But I think we kind of hit on the questions about. I had a couple questions about the size and the paint, JMU. How are they going to defend the post? So we kind of hit on that already. Last question here, just defensively, what is JMU trying to do? Are they trying to heat teams up? Do they play any zone, man? What are they like on the defensive end?
They'll do all of that. They slowed Arkansas State down because Arkansas State does like to get it into we'll shoot it in the first 7 seconds or something like that. And then they do sort of a zone, soft, full court pressure. They're really not trying to turn you over. They are trying to slow you down. So instead of 30 seconds or 25 seconds, you have 20 or 15 seconds to set your offense. I'm not sure that is an issue for Wisconsin, being stereotypical. They, like you mentioned, they like to get it up and down. but they can run the offense. So they'll play man-to-man. They'll switch it up. They'll play some zone, but it usually is a straight man-to-man, and they did show some pressure both against Texas State and against Arkansas State just to slow them down, not necessarily to try and turn it over, but they can play some good defense. They are tough defensively. Sometimes teams were having tough times just getting Arkansas State, I think early on had a tough time just getting shots off to begin with. So they're a tough defensive basketball team. All right, one more timeout. When we come back, we'll discuss the keys of the game. Can the 12-seeded JMU Dukes upset the 5th-seeded Wisconsin Badgers? Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. This game has gone from 5.5 down to 4.5 up to 6. And it seems to be settling in at that 5.5 point mark. We shall see. Also, I'm liking some App State. I probably should have jumped on it when it was at 10.5. I haven't looked at it since. And probably do the money line on that one too. We'll see. A lot of those Power 5 schools, and I know App State's disappointed about not making the NCAAs, but boy, those Power 5 schools don't like being in the NCAAs either. And App State has a chance to upend ACC team, so and in state. So that is one of the benefits of the NIT is that they make it really convenient for some of the teams. So it should be a good crowd. A lot of the same colors, black and gold. So you're not gonna be able to tell the fans from who. But I like App State in that ball game, and I don't even care if you call me a homer. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt. Let's wrap things up of our crossover edition from Ryan Harings. We both give you our keys to the game between the JMU Dukes and the Wisconsin Badgers.
You want to talk some keys of the game? Maybe final thoughts?
Certainly. So the keys of the game for JMU would be, they got to shoot the 3 well. And that to me, that's like throwing to the tight end. That opens up everything else. If Friedel and Edwards and Xavier Brown at one point in time, 4 for 4 from 3 in the Sun Belt Championship game. If they're hitting threes, that's going to open it up for Carey and Bickerstaff and Woodley. They'll be tough to beat. If Wisconsin can defend the 3 and force them to go inside, that'll be a big advantage for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that. I was listening to, I forget what game it was. It was maybe the Illinois game Wisconsin lost, but the regular season one, not the one in the Big Ten tournament. But the announcing crew was saying, man, if the Badgers can just fix their defense, there's a point when you're 30 games into a season, you're not fixing your defense or your offense. You kind of are who you are. Right. So I expect JMU to get shots. I expect them to score. The Badgers just need to outscore them, and that's really been their MO in their wins this year. They've outscored teams for the most part.
So what is that like? Because that not has been Wisconsin's MO for the last 30 years. What happened? Analytics happened.
It's so funny because you spend years just wishing for a little better offense. Let's be a little more explosive. And then you get it and you fall off on defense, right? Like it just invariably happens. That's just how it works. And it's not that they don't have good individual defenders. I don't want to paint that out that JMU's going to get every shot they want. Chucky Hepburn is an excellent individual defender when he's locked in. They got dudes who can defend, but as a system, it just hasn't been as good this year. But I do think if we're talking keys of the game, I'll give you one. When Stephen Crowell, the center, when he's engaged and plays hard, the Badgers are really good. And then there's games where, like the Purdue loss in the regular season, he didn't score as a starting center. I mean, I know Edey's tough, but you can't not score. So there's games where he's invisible. And
he's got to play hard in this one, right? He's not going to not play hard in this game.
I mean, listen, there's just games where he's invisible, and Badger fans will tell you that. I would agree. I mean, you're certainly going to play hard in March, and I expect him to have a good game. And when he has a good game, when Stephen Crowell's locked in, when he's engaged, he's a guy who'll pick and pop too. He shoots about 43% from 3. When he's engaged, he is a handful, and the Badgers are really tough to beat. So that's kind of why I started off with size. How are they going to defend the post? Because if he's getting going, I have a hard time thinking the Badgers are going to lose. But he doesn't always get it going, and that's been kind of one of the big talking points this year for Wisconsin fans.
So it will be interesting, the size inside, who can handle that, and if the 7-footers can handle the shorter but sturdier JMU guys, that'll be an issue for JMU. That is for sure. All right, he's Ryan Harings. It should be a lot of fun. Unfortunately, we have to wait until the last game of the first round to get this one in.
I'm excited. In some ways, that's better, right? Because then you can enjoy the rest of the games. Because if my team loses early, I don't want to watch anything else. Like, I'm done. So now I can enjoy everything in peace, have some wings, have some IPAs, whatever it is, off to the side, and then do that game after seeing a full day of basketball. It's the best time of the year, and I cannot wait for it.
As if the 5-12 seed wasn't enough, but you have to hope for some upsets, because if there aren't very many upsets by the time we get to 10 o'clock Eastern and 9 o'clock Central Time, you're going to be sitting there like,
what we do?
This is going to be us.
Yeah. I will say this, though. All the 5s won last year. The 5 swept it last year.
Well, that's not good news this year.
It's actually probably bad.
That's not good news this year. I will leave you for this. I'll give this to Kara Ritchie. She covers Arkansas State. The Sun Belt 12 seeds are 3-0 in their lifetime.
Ooh, I don't like that. No, it's going to be
hasn't been very many, but they are 3-0.
It's going to be exciting, man. I think this conversation was great. I think both fan bases probably get a little smarter being able to listen to this type of stuff. So, yeah, this is great.
It is win and move on. Last year we did it with Eric Kane in Tennessee, and they hung on to beat the Cajuns, and they were so we'll see what happens here. Ryan Harings, Locked On Badgers. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan, and Bucky for the JMU fans. Let them know who Bucky is.
I love it. Bucky is the Wisconsin mascot, so Bucky Badger. If you notice, kind of have a wooden carved Bucky right there. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on the podcast, you're not going to, or on audio, you're not going to see that. But yeah, Bucky Badger, the Wisconsin mascot, one of the more iconic looking mascots in college sports, I would say. I'm a little biased, but I think he's up there for sure.
All right. Thanks for hopping on, Ryan. Have a great night and enjoy the basketball.
Of course. You as well, sir.